You have something squealing, Ralph. I don't know if it's you or me. Sounded like you. All righty. We are live, Ralph. I don't know if you're able to
Yeah,
share.
yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. I was just seeing if you were able to share it around. We are live. We have.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Ralph is just sharing the live right now, but we are tonight. We're going to talk. We had a request to talk about hunter interviews and wait times. So as soon as Ralph gets done sharing that, uh, we will begin talking about the hunter interviews and wait times. Hey, Vicky, how are you doing? So, Vicky, we will, or I will see you Thursday morning. We will be flying out. I believe our plane's going to leave at 8 o'clock tomorrow, and we will fly into Philly and get there around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and we're going to stay the night in Philly, and then we'll meet up with you Thursday.
No, ready?
All right, Ralph. So, like I said, we had a request to speak about hunter interviews. You want to start?
Take that back. Go ahead. I need to do a couple more here. I
Okay.
say that you do it to Mullins.
Yeah, it automatically shares to it.
Then I ain't got to worry about it. I'm sorry. Uh, yeah, we can start with the hunter interview. I don't know how many people do a lot in that hunter interview. I've seen some where they really don't do anything except go to an extensive hunter interview. I believe so far, I think Renee from New Jersey probably had the most in-depth one. And uh, so I
Yeah,
think a
Judy
lot of times,
Judy Catrett has a pretty in depth one as well.
yeah. And a lot of people just don't realize how much asking certain questions can lead into the wait time scenario, um, and save a lot of time when you're trying to prioritize multiple tracks in a day or a night, or whether to wait for the next morning. You can pick up on, you can ask 5 questions and you might hear one thing that tip you off to needing to wait, which in my world, it's, I say mine, our world where we get quite a few calls, it leads to shuffling that priority up quite a bit. And so I don't know that I've got the best hunter interview. It's just mine is more just try to find out where the placement is. And, for instance, like gut shot, to me, I don't care if you've got lung and guts. If it's guts, I go to guts. And so that's the reason why I do it, but give some of the reasons you do it, because I think yours is a little more in depth than what I do. Excuse me a second.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I may not be as detailed as some, but some key things that I like to ask for is, have you looked for any sign? How long did you wait before you looked? What colors? If you found any blood, what color is the blood? Is there any gut matter? And if you found any bone, just I like asking key questions that'll identify where that deer may have been shot. And like you said, that all it comes into play with the wait times, and especially peak of the season when I might have 6 or 8 tracks lined up in the morning or more. It helps to shuffle those around because obviously I'm not going to take my tracks in order. If I have a gut shot, that's going to be pushed back. So asking the right questions is definitely crucial. Another thing I'll ask is how much land do you have? Because that you're going to change up tactics depending on how much land. I mean, we got called on one last year. The guy had 5 acres. Well, 5 acres, I'm gonna extend that time out much further because you don't have as much room to work with. So that's why I told him, although the sign seemed pretty good, I said, look, time's on our side, because he said he didn't have permission. The neighbor wouldn't give him permission. So we waited, probably it was about double what we normally would, and ended up recovering the deer on the 5 acres.
Yep. I do a lot of in-town hunting myself as far as the urban areas, and that to me is crucial because they are ramped up, and we've found some big deer in some of these urban areas, and the hunter it's kind of you're wanting to wait, but he is just dying to get in there. So it gets tough on some of that small lot type stuff, because I don't even call it acreage. It's lots that we're going to that. So it definitely, and some of their answers can make you have to ask 5 more questions, depending on certain situations too. Like push deer, if they went in there, what I run into a lot, and I think hunters push deer way more than they think they do. And if I see something that they've went in and searched 300-400 yards on a blood trail, I'm probably going to give them more time, just because I think they've pushed the deer if they've went that long, or the deer's not going to be recoverable anyway. So it's not going to hurt anything to wait. But there's a ton of things that you can pick up in that hunter interview that can schedule the rest of your day or night for you and help you with that. That's couldn't imagine doing all this on lead too, for the northern people that have to be on lead mostly. That to me would be just extremely crucial.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much treat every call as far as wait times as if I was on lead. I started doing that years ago, and I don't have near the bay or catch numbers that I used to. Quite frankly, I don't want to put my dog at risk. I'd rather give it time to expire. Of course, there's times where, it's a leg shot or something like that, and we're going in off lead. That's a different scenario. And even then, I don't rush right to it.
Yeah.
Now I wait a little longer than the average person, but one of the key things that I've added to my hunter interview or phone interview is, have you been in contact with another tracker? Yep. As we get more and more trackers, these impatient hunters start calling, and if someone tells them, hey, I think you need to wait, a lot of times they pick up the phone and they call the next person. So I'll ask them, hey, have you been in contact with another tracker? And they'll say, yeah, I spoke to one, and they weren't able to make it out. And I said, you mind if I ask who that is? And they tell me, well, I'll call that tracker and say, hey, I got a call from this person. What's the deal? And they'll say, oh, well, it's a gut shot, and I told them I wanted to wait 8 hours. And So I'm not going to take that track, because then the hunters some of them will start getting wise, and they won't tell you the details. They won't tell you that they found gut matter because they want you to come there sooner. And a lot of times, just by asking if they've been in contact with another tracker, we find that information out. And, if we're not too busy, I'll tell the other tracker, hey, let's show up together.
Yep. Yeah. I think a lot of times too, what you was talking about, the hunter deceiving you a little, I've definitely had them do that, just hoping that you would show up quicker and get there and find out the situation. And I'll leave and come and just say, I'm not going to do the track, especially on gut, shots. So that definitely has to be watched out for, because they, I've had them do that and do it multiple times a year, where, like you're saying, they get wise to it, and it's coming out in the end anyway. So
that's right.
We need to make sure as trackers, don't put aside the wait times just for the sake of getting a track. It usually is going to blow up in your face. And and most trackers, if they know you told them something about, like you, I don't want to take a track from somebody if just because they didn't get to hear what they wanted to hear. I'll back up the other tracker, and I've done the same thing. Me and Ernie Johns did that one night. We both was calling about a track and found out each other was calling, and I just called him up and I said, hey, well, we don't need to be sitting here worried about the track. Let's just both go. We had a ball. So actually, it was the first time I ever tracked with Ernie, and we've tracked several after that. So it working that way doesn't just help that one individual track. It helps you get along and became a friend that you don't mind going and tracking with. And we have a ball doing that.
That's right. And, we have a lot of trackers in our area, and it wasn't as much of a problem before when we didn't have the amount of trackers. But even though we have a lot of trackers, we have a lot of tracks. I know, Ralph, you refer a ton out every year. I refer a ton out, and still go on a couple hundred a year. There's no shortage, even though we have. But when you have the amount of trackers we do, I think in my area, within an hour and a half or so, I think there's 11, 12. Actually, now there's probably 15 trackers.
Yeah.
And although more trackers brings more exposure and brings more calls, it also brings more tracker shopping. So that's became a very important question to ask: is, have you been in contact with anyone, or has anyone tracked the deer already? Because that's been happening a lot.
Yeah, that's where they get real deceptive on that. They don't like telling you they've had another tracker come out.
Right. And like our state, we have a handlers group. We can hop in there and discuss that and say, hey, I got a call here, or I'm going here, or we have some group text going on and say, hey, I'm going this area to track a deer. And next thing you know, someone says, well, I was just there. I was like, all right, well, what's the details? And it was completely different from what the hunter told me. Yeah. And on the flip side, I've backed up other trackers that's called me and said, hey, I think this one's recoverable. I don't know what happened. My dogs just weren't working right. And, I've done the same. The other important aspect of that hunter interview is being able to ask the right questions to find out the details and decide if you are the right team for the job. And that's something we need to be mindful of as trackers, is be honest with ourselves. Do we have the right team for this job, or should I refer this track out?
Yep.
Because in some cases you may not be the right person. If you're a first year tracker and you get a call and they say, oh, I've had 15 guys out here, I've already had 2 other dogs on it, and your dog's been on 10 tracks, probably not the right track for you to go on.
Yep.
or just call and ask for backup.
Yeah, or get somebody that is to go with you so it's not a waste.
Right.
Now, I'll be honest, don't backing up another tracker, to me, that's fun. We have a ball doing that on both sides. I've called them in for me, and I've had them call in and just go in tango just to be there if something goes wrong or stuff like that. I just don't mind it. I love doing that stuff. It's good when some people think that it's a negative. To me, it's a positive when somebody knows that they got some limitations or a limitation and they call for backup. That makes me respect them 10 times more.
That's right.
There was
yeah, Chuck made a comment here. He said, what gets me around here, I have had them tell me that they have not called anybody else. And when I contact them again to let them know that I'm on the way, they'll tell me that they have another tracker out there already. That's a big one. That's how you end up on my do not track list.
Yep.
And that's when I have a conversation with that other tracker and say, hey, did you happen to ask, or did they mention that they had a tracker, just to see, that way you can have that conversation and let other trackers know what's going on there. Glenn Martin says, I assume if it's already been tracked, then the second team going after would be fighting a lot more disturbed scent. That's true. It's very true. I have found a lot behind other teams, and I've called other teams in to find some behind me that I knew was dead, just dog having a bad day or whatever it is. But there again, that's being honest with yourself and swallowing your pride and saying, hey, I need some help.
Yep. But also, there's also some tactics. I mean, that's another show. But knowing and prying that out of somebody during the hunter interview, like grid searching or a lot of people out there, another dog out there, you can avoid some situations and make it better for yourself. Also, just trying to get outside the contaminated area and try to work it that way, just to minimize a lot of that situation that could be, detrimental to the dog, especially in an unexperienced situation. There's some things you can do to help your situation out. And that's where having an experienced tracker with you, if you're new, not to come out and put their dog out, because I've been to many and never turned a dog out, and we'll go, assess the situation. And, like I said, I've made circles around, 100 yards outside the hit site and just circled it and pick up a trail. There's little different tactics that you learn over the years that it could dang sure help you in those situations. And that's all gained from a hunter interview, but also could be gained from when you get there and you can tell, like I forget who it was. I think it was Joseph Brown. You get there and you see a lot of tracks or footprints. Somebody's been there, and they've told you they haven't. Well, you just kind of get them to fess up, and it might change your game plan and get you to do something that you wasn't planning on doing, but it's all from just paying attention.
That's right. And let me go back over here. Switching screens. Kyle Park says, I've given multiple tracks to other trackers just to be able to go with them and watch them work their dogs. Best way to learn. And Kyle invited me to go out tonight, and I appreciate that invite, Kyle. Just have a lot going on before we fly up to PA tomorrow. Emily says, when I know they have grid searched, I ask if they can take me back to where they stopped. If so, I'll go there and cast. Clean ground is what I'm looking for. I do that sometimes, with the we talked about this earlier, Damon Chase, in a group chat we had going on. A younger dog, definitely. You got to get past that, but you have a pretty well seasoned dog. They tend to blow right through it. And I'm using that term loosely. I mean, sure they got to work it out, but more seasoned veteran dog can progress that a lot quicker for the most part.
Yeah, I had one last year that it wasn't really anything anybody did wrong, but the deer was chasing a doe after it had been shot. He was bleeding like crazy, and you could not figure out what was happening. Every 20 yards, there would be a cross, an intersection of blood. I finally started putting out reflective tape, and after about 30 minutes of just keeping on, and Camo was she was on trails, and she'd stayed on blood all the time. And I stopped and shined my light up ahead, and it looked like Christmas lights out in the woods. And I just said, good gosh, I'm never going to figure this out. So I just stopped, and, it wasn't any fault of anybody's, but we just got outside and circled, and boom, she picked up where the deer exited that area, and we ran it across the hard road and couldn't do anything with it. But still, those situations, when you realize the situation, sometimes an experienced dog needs to have a little relief too.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I wasn't saying that. I was just that sidebar conversation we had earlier today reminded me of that, because we talked about the same thing.
Yeah.
And on a different scenario, I've had it where it's kind of the same thing, going in circles, and I'm sitting there thinking that the hunters had been in there grid searching, and it was actually a yearling, and that yearling was just circling on top of itself back and forth. We finally got it, but the whole time I was thinking, these son of guns grid searched, and I had a guy. I went to a track. In fact, I stopped and got gas on the way, and the game warden was at the gas station. He's like, "Hey, I want to follow you and watch." And first thing I got there, went through the hunter interview process. I said, "Have you grid searched?" "Yeah, we just went in there just a little ways." I said, "Which way did you come out?" "Oh, we came back out the same way." We get about 150 to 200 yards into the trail, and the dog takes a right. And we go, 70, 80 yards, and the dog stops, wants to turn back around. He said, "Well, this is the way I walked out." I said, "I thought you said you didn't go very far and you walked out the same way." "Well, I guess I was wrong." Yeah, the dog started to go that way, obviously, and then figured it out. I said, "Nope, this isn't right. I'm going to turn around and go back."
Yep.
Perry Lawrence has a comment here. It says, "I'll tell them in interview on phone, and when I'm there, I say I'm here, I'm going to track. But to help me know how to better work this, have you had dogs or people tracking, and how far have they gone?" I like to do that before and when I arrive, because I've gotten different answers. I do want to touch on a hunter interview that on a test line that I administered in Pennsylvania, which was Darren Miner. And you can tell Darren's line of work through his hunter interview. So he would ask me something, I would give him the answer. He would repeat it back to me. Then he would ask another question. And then the question after that, he would ask the first question that he asked worded differently to see if he got the same answer. So I said, "Yeah, you can tell he's had some investigative."
Darren sneaky.
Oh yeah. But I took something from that. I'm like, that's pretty good tactics. It's, and that's when you can tell, hey, and just like a deer reaction, what was the tail up or was the tail down? And I'd answer, said it was down, and then he'd ask, "Well, did you get a good look at which direction it went?" And then the next question would be, "So the tail was up, right?" Vicky said, "Welcome to Northeast." I actually thought that was pretty good tactics. And that's a good thing about traveling and meeting different people and working with different teams. That's a benefit of a network. And too often some people, it just seems like lately we see more and more people kind of not as eager to work with others. And I have way more fun working with other teams and telling
Oh,
stories, bouncing things off of one another. Me and Randy's been bouncing stuff off of one another for, I don't know, forever, a long, long time. You know, he'll call me for, ask me for advice. I'll call him, ask him for advice, or we'll just have something weird come up and try to work it out together.
and
You know, I've
that's,
done the same with you, you know.
oh yeah. Yeah, me with you. I never mind calling and asking. Somebody might have seen something I've never seen before, and I don't care if it has it. I put it in my arsenal of stuff to do next time. You never know when you're going to run into stuff, and it's good to, you know, like the one. I know we're getting a little off subject, but like when you first came up with the, when a dead deer's laying on the ground, it'll have other bucks laying with it or other deer laying with it. So when you jump one, don't just assume it's the hurt deer. It could be the deer laying with the dead deer. And the guys that track around me, they've put that into their options now because they've seen it by going with me. I know Jason, Kayla, and Travis, now they all know that can happen because they've seen us reset on a deer, and they were blown away when that happened. And it was all coming because you ran across that one time, and I took that and started making that part of my just kind of cardinal rules. If I jump, I'm going back and resetting unless I see that there's evidence that the wounded deer is the one that they ran off. And so
That's
it
right.
worked. And
Yeah, that year that happened, I was in South Georgia. Trying to remember how long it was. It was a long time ago. The first time it happened, but actually, Randy had referred that track to me, and we actually crossed each other's paths going to tracks. But he had already, just the way it worked out, and I got there and started trailing. We softly jumped the deer, and deer started running. Well, it circled and came back by us, and it was a doe with blood all down its side. And I asked the hunter again. I said, "You sure it was buck?" He said, "Oh yeah, it's a big buck." He said, "That's not it." I'm like, "In the world?" So I went back, restarted, and sure enough, right where they jumped, the buck ended up getting up and leaving. And we ended up getting that buck. It went through about 3 bottoms and was weak enough, bait up. But that was the first time I seen it. And then that same year, a couple weeks later, we went on another track here in my hometown, and we were off lead. The dogs jumped, was running, and I started to cut the corner. I said, "You know what? I'm going to walk over and see where they jumped." And right where they jumped, that deer was laying dead. And so, anyways, during that time, they were running, and they ran by the hunter's friend in the truck, and that deer had blood on it where it was laying down.
they got to be laying close to get blood on them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. But you don't see that often. It was just, that was pretty odd to have it happen twice in the same year.
Yep.
You know?
It definitely does. I don't know. And sometimes it takes time, and especially when you're at the end of a long day and that's happening, you might have to go back a little ways to reset things. And you just got to stick with the plan. Because I know me sometimes, and I have had it happen where I didn't go back, and boy, that bothers me after I get refreshed going, I should have went back. So I've just kind of quit not doing that and going and just making it one of the absolutes, which is going back and resetting. It don't take that much time. and or either backtracking instead of resetting. Sometimes I'll backtrack because you can tell with the gar, you can tell where they went. And I did one last year and did that, and we just backtracked. The deer, they jumped, and I called them off after a few hundred yards and come back, and we backtracked right to the wound bed, and you can tell it was just muscle blood, and we just called it at that point. And so there's different tactics to doing it, but it's worth the effort because it dang sure makes the hunter feel better.
Oh yeah, and don't think it won't happen on lead. I had it happen last year. I was on lead. I was actually working auto, and we were trailing on lead, and a buck got up and left right inside of us, and auto wanted to go that direction, and I mean we had blood going that way, and so in my mind I said, he's on it. And we went, I don't know, about 150 yards, and he quit. And it was his first season, and actually one of the first real tracks. I second guessed him. He was trying to go back and get back on the line. I said, I'm gonna go grab Dixie and put back out on it. And we ended up finding recovering the dead deer 10 yards from where that one got up. And I mean, it was bedded down. It got up and left, but the dead deer was 10 yards away, and Otto would have had it if I'd have just trusted him. But yeah, you know how that goes sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people chiming in saying they've had the same thing happen. I wanted to go back up here to Gene Ferris. He said, I will go behind another tracker, but I do my best to get in touch with the previous tracker. I never brag about it if I find the deer behind the person. That's the right way to be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean I might
yeah,
give them
wait
a little hard
a
time.
minute. I've seen you in action sometimes.
But it's just,
it was all in fun.
Yeah, it's giving Mike Alguire a little crap for finding one behind him. Well, of course, I left out the part that he called me and said, "Hey, I know this deer is dead." But yeah, so one thing. So I was just, I'll put it up there. I was working on stuff for this seminar. And right here I was putting in, deer anatomy, shot placement is key. And, during or throughout this entire PowerPoint presentation, it talks about the wait times. And, one thing I want to mention about wait times and the interview process and all that is, when you start talking liver, you're not just talking liver shot. You pretty much always clip something else. It could be part of lung, gut, but the liver is such a small, and I'm not saying you can't hit it perfectly, but when I started putting in the wait times, I put in a pretty wide range because it's really dependent on what else is hit. And sometimes you'll have those identifiers like lung blood with the liver specs, but sometimes you don't. In that case, I err on the side of caution. And the same thing with a gut shot. Those two shots also, ambient temperature plays a big role in that. So that, like Ralph, some gut shots here, we can get on 6 hours, they're dead in early season.
Yeah.
As that temperature drops, those wait times increase. That, you'll see those deer alive 8, 10, maybe 12 hours later.
Yep. And man, it just, if you will give your wait times, or give, credence to that wait time, you don't have near as long a tracks either.
That's right.
You might still find a deer, but man, deer lay down because they're hurt, and they'll die there most of the time if you'll leave them alone. Most hunters can't stand it, but and we've had that talk today too, going over some of this stuff. It just kills me when I hear a hunter say, oh man, I got good blood, and I got into, he's all excited. He got a wound bed, and my heart just drops, knowing, all right, he just made it not necessarily harder, but harder in the distance category, because that deer's gone now, and he's going to get out of town. And people don't think, or hunters don't think, it's probably not as much a tracker issue, but a hunter's, well, I guess it could be a tracker if they go early. You can get off property in a heartbeat when a deer's hurt, and they beeline it out of town to get away from something they think's fixing to hurt them again. They're gone, and you never even see it. You never hear them. And it's a ton of hunters. I can't believe that they think that they're going to hear every deer get up and leave. When you can sit in a tree stand real alert and a deer come 5 feet under your tree and you never heard them before. So they can get out of there without you hearing them. And it just makes it tough. People, if they would learn, hunters especially, if they would learn to just not go in, man, their recoveries would just go through the roof.
Yeah, and I gotta give Mike Alguire a hard time again, because he says, in my defense, we were whooped 5 days straight tracking from daylight to dark. But I was in the same boat. I still found it behind you, Mike. No, no, like I said, he did call me, and actually, they stepped all over it. Just one of those deals. It was a tough track, I will say that, but I'm gonna give him a hard time. Scott Lopez, just like we talked about, he said early season gut shot on a doe, I go ASAP, no need to wait, because if they die while waiting, the meat spoils, no point in tracking anyways. I haven't had many spoil.
I haven't either.
I'm not going to say they can't. And maybe that's because, that early season we're going sooner, because, over the years, just knowing that they're going to expire quicker. But yeah, that's a good point. And since Scott commented, I kind of want to bring something up about last year. We were talking earlier about networking and communicating with other people. And, Scott called me one night last year. He was, hopefully he doesn't mind me sharing this, but he was in the woods, and he was telling me that, one dog was baying, and the other dog disappeared off his handheld, went to a question mark. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go over there. And you talk about a wild, crazy thing. The dog, there was, I guess, a vertical culvert pipe in the ground, and the dog was in the bottom. And he's like, hey, hang on, I'll call you back. I got to get down here and get my dog. I'm like, that's pretty wild. And I would have never thought about that, probably old well or something.
Yeah.
But, we just happened to be on the phone, or he called me telling me what was going on with his Garmin, and that's something I look for. And actually I found one not too far in the woods behind my house that I would have never even thought twice about.
I've actually got one on my property out there in Callahan.
Yeah. He said it was crazy. They got the deer. That was, and I don't think I ever told Scott I appreciated that call, even though that wasn't the intent of his call, but that we're able to share it here, and someone else might run into it. I know Randy's fell in sinkholes up there, just not too far from where Randy's at. There's a lot of that ground by those creeks and rivers. Just you can walk along and just the bottom fall out of you.
Yeah, it happens a lot in mining areas.
Yep. So we had a question right here. Gene Ferris says, how do you get hunters from looking for the deer instead of tracking the deer? I have one I track for, and they push every deer way too hard and too far. I'm going to be honest. I don't know. Those are the people I put on the back burner. I just honest with them. Hey, you going to keep doing this? I may not come. And they may call someone else, but it's kind of the point where, I stay busy enough. I'm not worried about dealing with someone like that. I've got some friends that are that way, and I'm just very blunt with them.
Yeah. I've had people where you just talk and they promise and they do everything on the phone, get there, and Travis is probably sitting there laughing now because we got there and it looked like a ball team come out of the woods. There were so many people coming out of the woods when we got there. It was just unbelievable. And we had gone over and over this because they had already been searching. We knew it. And they just, it was crazy. And boy, that's aggravating. But sometimes they just cannot listen or don't understand what in the world they're doing. And so it is what it is.
Yeah.
But if I find that out on the phone, yeah, I'm like you. You dang sure aren't going to be prioritized to the top.
No. And like Scott Lopez said the same thing, Gene. I tell them if you go and look before I get there, I'm not coming, and that's the point I'm at now. And last year, Randy had it happen. We all have it happen every year, but Randy said he actually called me. He was heading to a track, and he was headed to it was Nashville, Georgia, I think is where he was headed, or no, it's somewhere over that way. Anyways. And a guy that Randy and I have both tracked for over the years called Randy, said, hey, I might need a tracker, blah, blah, blah. Well, then they called me, and I called Randy. I said, hey, the so-and-so called me, and he's like, well, I already committed to that one. And anytime that I get a track closer to someone else, I reach out to them first, just courtesy. And I even asked the guy, I said, have you spoke with anyone else? He said, yeah, I spoke with Randy, but he's busy. So the first thing I did when I got off the phone, I said, hey, so-and-so called me, said you were busy. I just wanted to check with you before I went. He said, no, I told him I'd be there as soon as I finished this track. So I called the guy back and said, hey, Randy said he's coming, blah, blah, blah. The guy ended up calling another tracker, had the tracker come out, and Randy's coming back. They never called Randy and said that they had someone else out there. So Randy gets there, and he's waiting at their camp, and they wouldn't answer, wouldn't respond to text. And finally, I think it was 30, 45 minutes later, Randy's just decides to leave, and the guy says, yeah, I had so-and-so come out, and I forgot to tell you, I'll send you a check. Guess where that guy went on my list, even though I didn't track for him. He do not track.
Yeah.
Steven Sewell said, don't help drag the deer out. They'll catch on. I actually got where I rarely help anyway. Yeah. My right knee is bone on bone, handling dogs, and not just that, getting backed up on tracks, got to get going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Damon Chase says friends are the worst. Yeah, you see one of my friends up there, Mike Alguar? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, friends will do stuff stupid, and as a hunter, knowing all yards a phone call away, and they're some of the dumb ones that do some of the stupidest things.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've tracked a lot of deer, and I've tailgated a lot of deer over the years, and I am the worst tracker or worst hunter when it comes to tracking. I'm impatient. I got to where sometimes I'll call another tracker so I don't make a bad decision because I get all messed up in the head.
Hey, Michael, you mentioned going out one. Where was that track at? Yeah, maybe he'll answer.
Yeah, in fact, one of my good friends, and Ralph, you met him. Oh, Green Cove Springs, Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of my good friends that I met him through tracking, and you met him last year, Ralph, when a bunch of us went up there and worked together, try to get him some answers and more closure on his property. But he called me one night. It was a referral from Randy years and years ago. It was actually 10 minutes from Randy's house. And I was so backed up. I think I went on 12 tracks that day. And I told him, I said, look, I'll be there. I said, it'll probably be 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'll be there. And sure enough, and I told him before we got there, I said, look, that sounds to me like the deer's brisket shot. We're probably not going to get it. And he's like, well, I got plenty of land, plenty of room. And I showed up. It was right around 2:30 in the morning, maybe 3, put on the track. And he said, I still can't believe you showed up. You told me you'd be here. I couldn't believe you show up at 2:30 in the morning. And we got back to his house. He gave me a very, very good tip. And he's like, well, what's the biggest buck you ever shot? And I told him, he's like, man, our 2-year-old bucks are that big. And he said he'd invite me back. And I was joking around. I said, yeah, I've heard that before and never get the phone call. He said, I'm going to call you next November when it's right. And he did. And we've been friends ever since. I think that was, I don't know, 9 years ago, something like that. And, now, we go hunting together, we go fishing together, we all over the place. And, it was all because I kept my word on the track. And he said the biggest thing was, I told him I thought it was brisket shot. Didn't think we could recover it, and we didn't. And 3 weeks later, they got it back on camera, and it was shot in the brisket. And all of that came from what our main topic was tonight from the phone interview, the hunter interview. Tommy asked, about accidentally blocked you, Tommy. How do I get off of that? All right. Tommy asked if there a chart with wait times. Tommy, there's charts out there with wait times. The problem with those is it can change a lot from, I guess you'd say, region to region. Like Scott Lopez was saying earlier, when it's hot, the deer are going to expire quicker, and you got to get them in the cooler quicker after they expire. So, where we might go on a gut shot in early September at 6 hours, or even like Trevor Foley down in South Florida, most of those gut shots are, 4, 5, 6 hours at the top. You want to get on it, but if you look at most of the charts, they say 12 to 24 hours. If we waited 24 hours in this heat, the deer's been dead a long time and likely eaten by critters or just spoiled. So, but it's not about getting there so much before it spoils. It's getting there when it is, but it isn't. It's more about just being there at the right time when it expires in this heat.
Yeah, we all make those judgment calls getting there especially at the first of the season. I just choose not to go immediately. I don't have catch, I can't catch, but it just seems to make them easier, and they're a lot shorter if you give it some proper wait time within the time period that you think they're going to go bad. But
yep.
I would say 90, I shouldn't say a percentage. I would say most of them, though, I don't know that I've ever had one myself go bad by giving the proper wait times, and that's 6 to 8 hours down here easy. I've never had them go bad because we don't know when they're going to die.
But if you follow most of the charts you see out there that says 12 to 24 hours, you're going to have a spoiled deer.
Oh yeah,
and that's my point. When he's asking about charts, it's it's hard to have a chart. Best thing is to get with the veteran trackers in your area that's documented this stuff over the years.
Yeah.
And I had Mike Alguire's comment up there earlier. It says, to me, as a tracker, that's most important. Keep your word. Don't give the hunter the runaround. And that's key. We were talking earlier about, reputation, word of mouth. That's how you get a good reputation. Walker Knight, anybody in North Florida have a hoof or two? I do have some extra hooves, Walker.
Where's he at?
I can't
There's
remember.
a lot of North Florida.
Yeah. Alan said had someone show up at 2 a.m., took the track 900 yards, helped drag out, was 5:45 when we got back. Can't thank you guys enough. And the dogs, I jumped the deer 4 hours earlier, 20 yards from the stand. He never stopped again until 900 yards. Walker is in Brooker.
Yeah. I've got some up here in Callahan. I don't know who else would have some down there.
I don't know there. Yeah. I can ask around, but I got some in Perry. You got some in Callahan. Cassidy may have some.
Yeah.
But we can get you some either way. You just may have to travel a little bit.
Yep.
Like Scott Lopez said, I've had a bunch of hunters early season call and say the processor wouldn't take the deer because it was spoiled. So for does only, I just don't wait, and I get it. 7 days, then later on in the season with the better weather, 6 to 8 minimum. And that, again, that's, me and you are on the same page, Scott. And if we tried to wait that 24 hours like most charts say, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, no way. But I've had them, that's correct, but I've had them be alive too. So sometimes you get proven wrong, but at least you're airing.
But the majority of the time,
spoil them.
We got to base it off the majority. Michael Pritt said, I ran into some of these guys that think you're giving them the runaround when you start asking questions. I feel like they just want an answer that you're on the way. Well, I'm not the tracker for them because I'm going to ask the questions. I know I sound like a jerk saying that, but that's kind of the point I'm at.
Walker, if you know Tyler Engel, message me if you don't. He said he's got some hooves and he can meet you in Gainesville, so that shouldn't be that far.
Yeah, it's he's not too far from there. No. And Tyler, if you need more, I got about 600 at the house and season's right here on us. So.
Yeah.
And like Scott Lopez said, most charts are based on lead tracking as well.
Yep. Hey, since we got everybody in the season starting, with us testing a lot and be testing even more next year, if people can start saving parts of the hide, that would help us tremendously. Because we, not just hooves, because we use them during the testing season. We use parts of the hide on every track. So don't know how many we would need, but if we could save some, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think I have 3 or 4 whole hides in the freezer right now, but we also use them on Bertha.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler got to experience Bertha. Yeah, if anyone has any last minute questions or comments they want to bring up, we're going to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. I still got a lot to get done before heading out to PA tomorrow. I still got a few PowerPoints to go, and let me tell you, if you guys are in Pennsylvania, you're able to make that. Ralph has seen some of these PowerPoints. It's a lot of information.
Yep.
And I'll share something. This is something I wanted to share earlier that Shane Simpson had given me. We were talking about distance and everything. Well, if you look right here, and it shows kind of position, broadside, quartering away, quartering to. When I started looking at these numbers, total track average 377 yards. Of course, it doesn't say where it was hit, but when you start looking over here, like non-pass through, 627 yards, 419. It makes, even though this is an average, it doesn't say shot placement. When you start looking at stuff like this, that tells me the deer have been pushed. And I've been going through a bunch of this data the last few days. It's pretty wild stuff. I got a bunch about broadheads, not specific brands, but mechanical versus fixed, and deep diving into this stuff, and I'll be going over all that in Pennsylvania and in Iowa. Iowa's just a few weeks away. So we'll be going over a lot of that there as well.
Tom Hill asked a question there. How long are we going to do the live events here when the season gets started? We hadn't even talked about that.
We haven't. It's going to get rough for a while, but we may just have to shorten them up, and we'll make something happen.
Yeah, Tuesdays are probably still good evenings to do it, just because most people are working. But might do some right on the trail.
Yeah. Well, if you remember right, I did one on a test line one night.
Yeah.
Mike Alguire asked, when is the new tracking list coming out? I had a text from a guy that's no longer on Facebook and needed some names and numbers for him to keep in his phone. Depends on which state, but Ralph, you're pretty close on the Florida one, right?
Yeah, I would say by the end of the weekend, I should have it up and running, I hope.
The Georgia one's probably going to be, if I had to guess, a couple more weeks. We got the bulk of it knocked out, though.
Yeah, actually, the Georgia one's probably easier to me. So, but yeah, it's just, I'll have them before the season for sure, but I should have them this week for Florida, and I'm hoping by next week, Georgia.
And Scott says, when I say charts are geared towards on lead, it's because if we go in at 6 hours and a deer is alive off lead, can chase and bay them. On lead, they can't, and jump them out of the country. So on lead charts are based on straight up dead. Absolutely. And most of the time I'll try to get somewhere in between the two, but I'm still not waiting 24 hours and 90-degree temps.
Nah.
Mike said it's for Florida. I sent him Ralph's number. He is in Volusia County and will be in Waycross. Best thing to do, Mike, is send him that application because he doesn't have to be on Facebook to fill that out. And to let everyone know, I know this is a lot of people watching from all across the nation, but one thing we've been doing for in Florida for a while now, we had an issue. We got up to, I think it was 100, almost 190 trackers on our list, and half of those were no longer active. So we started having people resubmit each year, and we kind of put together a little point system process. Actually, I shouldn't say we put it together. We received the outline from Michael Bragg in Alabama, and we tweaked it to fit our needs, but still pretty much the same. So he's been using it for a while, and then we tweaked it and used it for us. With Georgia was the same way. Ken Parker, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, Ken Parker spent a lot of time trying to contact people. And Ralph, you may remember, I think we removed 30, 40 people that year that were just inactive. So this year we decided to do the same in Georgia to just help clean things up. And the other side of that is in Florida, we've done a pretty good job of mentoring people and bringing new trackers in, kind of taking them under our wing and helping develop them. And I don't have the exact numbers on me, but Ralph, we probably upgraded 10 trackers last year that were apprentices to somewhere in there.
At a minimum, I think there's more than that. So yeah.
And then this year we had in Florida, we had I want to say it was somewhere around 18 new trackers that will be apprentices.
I haven't counted. You talking about Florida?
Yes.
Yeah.
Georgia, I think there's 19 this year.
Hang on, I count.
I know in PA they have
16 new ones this year.
in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pennsylvania I think was 17 apprentices this year. By apprentice, that's a lesser experienced tracker.
There was 35 apprentices last year.
Whew, it was way higher than I thought.
Yep.
And we did have some that will be apprentices again this year, and honestly, Ralph, one of them spoke up and said, "Hey, I need to be an apprentice another year. I know I'm not ready."
Yeah. But and she goes, and that was one of mine, but she goes on a lot of tracks with me, and she got a new dog, so she wants to get a little more confident, but it definitely, and this goes back to one of the other, in our previous conversation, to me, about us enjoying going with people. As we do this, I enjoy going with the new trackers a lot. It's just fun to watch and see them grow and get to doing things and running their dogs. I'll back them up sometimes, and most hunters don't care, and we get a lot of relationships going with like you said, some of good friends now have all come from either tracking or these apprentices. Now we talk, weekly about tracking and stuff like that. It just, so all this to me, it just is even funner. Now I think I got 3 or 4 this year that I'll be mentoring, and it doesn't bother me a bit. I enjoy it. I'd just soon track with somebody than go by myself. So it's always good.
Yeah, and my wife used to go on a lot of tracks with me, and so I have an issue staying awake when I'm driving. I'll literally, some of you guys will you'll know what I'm talking about. You've been with me. I'll just fall asleep like nothing. And I got to pull over. So she gets worried about me since she can't go on as many as she used to. So Colby said, just my opinion, they need to be proven at least multiple references to be on the list for the public. We're taking that a step further, and we've done it in Florida. We had, I don't even know when that was, 4 or 5 years ago when Tim Cannon went with me, and Tim had 20 years experience.
Oh yeah.
We didn't discriminate. Hey, some people get pushed through faster, but we said, because it's not just about can you track.
No.
How do you interact with the hunters? Are you acting in a professional manner? There's other aspects to tracking. Are you willing to network with the rest of the teams? But so we take it a step further, and anyone new has to go through an apprenticeship. And it may be fast tracked. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
And some people's not going to like it. Some people doesn't like change. Some people thinks that there's some game playing, but I assure you it's not. And this isn't an ABTA thing. I'm just bringing this up. Now we do talk about this, and we have helped other states. Like we're helping Vicky Church with in Pennsylvania. They got a program going now too, and it's just it helps build the tracking community as a whole. With networking and building those bonds.
And that mentoring to me was one of the crucial aspects of doing it this way, because it keeps the inexperienced trackers from going out when an experienced tracker needs to be there. But and the faster we recognize that, it's better for the hunter. And we always say the mission's to make sure that hunter has the best chance of a successful recovery. And we don't mind trying, like with an inexperienced team, but we also would rather an experienced team be there to back him up so that things don't go wrong. And I think it's helped tremendously.
And by being there, it doesn't necessarily mean being there in person. It could mean being there to support them, whether it's a phone call, a text message.
We've done it both ways, and done properly, it all works.
Yeah, I want to highlight what Gene said right here. When one admits he or she isn't ready, earns my utmost respect. Too many think they're ready and jump in and start running too fast and don't know enough. And that's been the case for many years. And I was telling someone the other day, years ago, you couldn't tell me anything. It's
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. No.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just, it happens. It's like I said something a few weeks back about, it's like that 2 to 3 year mark where you get pretty decent, your dog's getting pretty decent, and you get that big headed syndrome. It happens to some people. And, what we've noticed is we've started mentoring people is it's curved that a lot.
Yep.
Let's see. Colby said, I seen the application y'all put out, but how do y'all go about grading on a point system going off their word with no hard proof? So it's essentially you do have to go off their word to an extent, but we do also do some research. Just like with the tracker app, Shane reaches out, and there's some people I just don't know, and I get on Facebook, I'll look up their Facebook, I'll search their name, I'll look at their tracking pages. We had one guy that moved to Florida and said he had 18 years experience in Louisiana, best dog in the state. Well, I started doing research and name never popped up. I spoke to 4 or 5 reputable trackers, and then they took it to other people and no one had heard of them. So guess what? You're an apprentice. And it didn't take long to realize that, what was going on. And I will say this, when people fill out these applications, you can see some stuff come up, and you can tell when stuff doesn't add up. We've ran across quite a few of them. It's, in fact, I was helping Vicky on one in Pennsylvania, and the guy put that he had 4 to 6 years experience and went on 15 tracks the previous year without a dog. And that he had a dog, but his dog was 6 months old. So, you see stuff like that and it just doesn't jive. And then you have some conversations, but for the most part, we can narrow it down pretty good. But regardless, if it's their first year, now Georgia is a little different because this is the first year implementing this program. From here on out, if it's their first year tracking for that list, they go into the apprenticeship. Let's see. Glenn Martin says, does Florida require a form of certification from one organization or another to track? Iowa requires no certification, which is crazy. Certifications helps vet you some versus just taking a random track. Florida does not require that. But for our list, we require a form of not necessarily a certification, but you're proving yourself through the apprenticeship program. Kelly York says, I'm very new. My first year tracking ever, planning on tracking for myself and running my dog some with Chuck Darby to get some experience and learn before I ever track for any public. That's the way to do it.
Yep.
Yeah. Bob said there was more than one questionable in PAs, so they have to prove themselves. And like I said, this is 4 states that I've helped with this program or process, and it's plain as day across the board. It's not just one state. And I do want to say we don't do this. Even, Ralph and I, we're part of the Florida group and the Georgia group. We don't make these decisions ourselves. It's a team effort. Mike Alguire will tell you he was involved with the Florida one. No one's making one decision. There's no decisions being made based on personal opinions or anything like that.
Yeah, it's all the admin team that gets together on a Zoom call, and we all go over every single application that comes in, unless they've proven themselves the year before. But we, especially the new people, even though they might be experienced, everybody talks about it, and we go through it one by one. I mean, it's last night we did the Georgia shoot. It was a 2-hour conversation, and we went through every one of them, and and it's a discussion. It's not, and everybody has an opportunity. And most people think we're hard on the dogs. We're not. We're hard on the trackers, because that's where we seem to have the most problem with attitudes. Or over the past few years, it's just been an issue that it's hardly ever the dog, and we just got to watch after. And that's when we're mentoring and going after or going with the others. We're looking at, I want to see how the handler handles things. You're looking at the dog, and we've come across a few that just needed a lot more tracks under their nose, but a lot of tracks with a bad attitude doesn't get any better. So we watch that handler, and we make, as a group, we make decisions based off of how they conduct themselves.
Yeah, Chris said, sent my interest in becoming a judge in Northern Iowa to Jeff. We'll be doing my season test with my K9 here come September 5th. Chris, please go on our website and submit that application. It should go to Travis. And then we can start the process there. And same goes for anyone that's interested. You can go to the website, fill out an application there.
Hey, you might disagree. Go over some of the situations that have arisen from us doing the application, in situations where, there might be some people that we don't want on the list. Is that something that we can go over for a second?
Yeah.
By doing the background, on people and looking at some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some pretty serious things happen in certain states. I'm not going to put anyone's name out there or anything like that, but many years ago we had a tracker that was basically using the list to find land to poach on, and we didn't know it at the time. It was pretty early on when the group started. I think we had maybe 10 or 15 trackers. Well, the guy went out there and tracked on the land, and turns out he took hog dogs, caught a hog. Well, a couple of days later, he went back to that property to poach. There was confrontation with the landowner. The tracker ended up shot, killed. Which it was his fault. It was self-defense, the landowner. But that was one incident. We had another incident where a tracker went live on Facebook on the track and was picking his dog up and throwing him. I shouldn't say throwing, but tossing the dog across the fence, crossing property lines. Actually crossed 8 property lines without permission. Dispatched the deer with a pistol in someone's backyard that they didn't know, drug it out to the highway, and all this was live on Facebook. Police showed up. He had his phone in his hand. They They drew their guns, thought that he was armed. He almost got shot because they thought they didn't know what the phone was in his hands. Luckily for him, that Facebook Live saved him. The officer was a hunter and went door to door and told him what he was doing. But and that's another incident. We've had a tracker that, or I should say, kind of a part-time tracker did some very awful stuff to a young child. So there's reasons why we do these public record searches, and and we don't have to have all the information. I mean, you can find out a lot with just a first and last name. And early on, there was some questions about some of the stuff on the applications, which we did remove. We wanted to respect some people, but there's also some things out there. We had another tracker who had multiple felonies that we weren't aware of, and ended up getting arrested multiple times on tracks, and now in prison. So these are things that we're trying to get ahead of. Although we put a disclaimer out there that this is between. We're just offering a list. We're not a business, and we put the disclaimer out there that the dealings between you and the tracker, but we still want to do our due diligence to this the best we can to provide quality trackers and that people can feel safe around.
And don't think that the game wardens don't know we're here and don't know. They know that list, and that is, in talking to some of them, that is the first place they go sometimes. So that's why we are so stringent on putting stuff on the site or taking stuff off the sites, is because they're watching, like it or not, they're watching us. And so that's just another, they got people that stay on Facebook all the time trying to hunt down people that are doing wrong. And they've called us wanting to know why things are happening before. So, and, so that's why we it ain't that we don't like seeing it. I like seeing a dog catch a deer just as good as anybody, but we can't put that out there. And so.
No, I think it was, Ralph, about 4 or 5 years ago, we received calls from the Department of Agriculture as well as the FWC, because someone had put a bay catch dispatch video. And actually multiple people reported it, and the Department of Agriculture and the FWC contacted us and said, hey, you guys need to get this off, this off of your, and take care of the people. Because if it continues, then we're going to have to do something.
Yep.
And just this past year, I had a game warden come to me, and he said, hey, we actually arrested some quote unquote trackers in National Forest. And he went out there, and turns out one of them was on our list, but it was good to hear this. He said that person didn't get arrested, the one that was on our list, but they were out there at the camp together, and the group of them went to track this deer. Well, they just kept dumping box after box after box of deer hounds on it. And they ran it for hours and was literally bragging about running the deer to exhaustion. And they got arrested. And he said the first thing they did was went and looked on our list and seen that none of them was on there, but they did find them on another list in a different group. But what made me kind of feel proud is when he said that the one individual, he said, we've been after him for a while. He's had some wildlife violations. He says, but since he's became part of your group, he said, we watched when he became part of the group, we were watching, and said, he said, I saw where, he was placed in an apprenticeship program with a mentor. And he says, not only did I see him abiding by the laws while tracking, I watched his entire life change. He said, now we're friends.
He actually helped him in court one time because of that.
Yep. You know, so yeah, don't think they're not watching, because they are. And you know, that was a good testament to the mentorship program, to hear how much that it impacted someone's life like that.
Yep. And Perry Lawrence said something that it definitely is true. Helps to get to know the wardens in your area. Once they have confidence in you, that really helps, because they can be told certain things from outside groups or people, and they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt and come talk to you rather than accuse you or assume you're doing wrong. And I think it helps tremendously. So I just think it helps. And I've had them, same with you, I've had them go with me on tracks, and they have a ball. They have just a ball. They talk, and I see them every so often, and they bring it up every single time that they wish they had more time to go do that. And I think it helps tremendously. You never know when you need them.
Mike Alward said it's not just FWC, it's law enforcement as well. Absolutely. It's all forms. Like I said, Department of Agriculture is one of them that contacted us over that video. And it's kind of funny. I'm not going to say the person's name, but I got a text message that says, just so you know, my legal name is blah, blah, blah. I have a cousin named blah, blah, blah. That's a complete criminal. Yeah. But
I'd say something's happened before. Wrong place at the wrong time and wrong name.
Yeah. Like I said, we're not out there. You know, I've heard all kinds of stuff that, you know, we're out there to play games. We're playing favorites. We're pushing people through. We're trying to restrict people. We're trying to hoard tracks. Believe me, I don't need to hoard any tracks. You know,
Nope.
We're just trying to provide a better service and try to help. I mean, we got so many new trackers out there. There was a bunch, I think 19 that applied this year in Georgia, that are newer or lesser experienced trackers.
Yep.
You know, and it's everywhere. Like I said, Pennsylvania, I think, was 16 or 17 newer trackers. Mike Algar says, good thing about tracking for deputies or their family members can help you get out of tickets. Mike, you get pulled over more than anyone I know.
Yeah, mine, I'm like what Perry just said. Mine says call them anytime I need them. That is one of that most of them say that. And once they get to know you, and they mean it, and they're ready to help you.
Yep. For sure. Well, does anyone have any last minute questions, comments? We'll give it
you said that 30 minutes.
Yeah, we'll give it a few. But yeah, I gotta finish up these PowerPoints. I'm so far behind. I say that I just keep adding more and more details. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone for participating, and we'll be back on next week, and I'll give a recap of what went on in PA, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Alrighty, we'll see y'all.
All right, thanks.